I was wiping the last desk in room 104 when I first heard the rumor. She probably took it. People like her always do. One of the mothers whispered just outside the classroom door, her voice sharp, like the click of her heels on the marble floor. People like me. I kept my head down, scrubbing the wooden surface harder than I needed to. My back ached from the double shift, and my hands were raw from the bleach, but none of that hurt as much as pretending I hadn't heard her. I wanted to turn around, to defend myself, to scream, but I couldn't. Not here. Not with Eli still in that school. I couldn't risk anything that would make them take away his scholarship. The bracelet in question was worth more than my monthly rent. A gift from someone's husband, I heard. Lost during the school's charity auction. And now, suddenly, everyone was looking at me, the janitor. The one who didn't belong. I told myself it would pass. That truth always rises eventually. But deep down, I knew better. In this place, the truth bends to the people who can afford to shape it. What they did not know was this. I wasn't the same woman I was 5 years ago. Back then, I would have walked away quietly, let them whisper, let them judge. But now I had Eli and he was watching. And I had learned that sometimes silence is not strength. I wasn't going to let them ruin us. Not this time. Before everything fell apart, our life was simple. Not easy, but simple. Every morning started at 5:15 a.m. I would pack Eli's lunch with whatever I could afford, usually peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices, and those small juice boxes I always bought in bulk when they were on sale. He never complained. Not once. Even when I knew he saw the other kids at Crest Hill Academy pull out gourmet lunches with tiny silver forks and sushi rolls. I was the school janitor, and he was there on a scholarship we were both terrified of losing. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery. The oven downstairs kept our place warm in the winters, but in the summer, it was like living inside a toaster. Still, it was home. Eli had his own little desk by the window where he would do his homework, humming quietly while I soaked my sore feet in a bucket of warm water after my shift. He was a good kid.
Kind.
Too kind, maybe. The type who noticed when someone else looked sad and shared his snack without saying a word. The type who held the door open, even for people who didn't bother to say thank you. It was just the two of us. I had Eli when I was 24. His father, Marcus, left when I told him I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. I never heard from him again. No child support. No birthday calls. Nothing. I could have chased him through the courts, but honestly, I didn't have the energy or the time. I was too busy building a life for my son from scratch. I made friends at the school, quiet ones. Ms. Rita, the cafeteria lady, always saved me leftover trays when she could. Mr. Harris, the security guard, called me kiddo, even though he was only 10 years older than me. They saw me. The others? They barely noticed I existed unless there was a mess on the floor. The school board, the PTA moms, the well-dressed parents, they looked at me like I was part of the building. Functional. Invisible. But I didn't mind. Not at first. As long as Eli had a shot at something better, I could take the looks. I could take the silence. Until the day I walked into the main hall, and every conversation stopped the second I entered. That was the first time I realized they were no longer ignoring me. They were watching. And what was coming next would tear our quiet little life into pieces. It started with a whisper. Mrs. Kingsley's bracelet is missing. Diamond. Family heirloom. Worth $20,000. I had just finished mopping the front entrance when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just gossip, another one of those rich people dramas that had nothing to do with me. Until it did. That afternoon, Principal Denning called me into his office. His tone was calm, too calm, like a blade wrapped in silk. Angela, there's been a complaint. Some parents think you might have seen something or taken something. I blinked. Excuse me? He didn't look me in the eye. We checked the security footage. You were in the hall near the gym after the auction ended. That was the last known location of the bracelet. I stared at him, stunned. I was cleaning, like I always do. He nodded, but his hands were clasped tightly on the desk, like he was bracing himself. Of course. Still, the Kingsleys are influential. They've asked us to suspend you until we've conducted a full investigation. I felt the floor shift under me. You're suspending me? Just protocol. I wanted to scream. I had worked here for 6 years. I had cleaned vomit off carpets, unclogged toilets, mopped up spilled wine from their black tie fundraisers. And now I was being treated like a criminal, without proof, without even a second thought. But that was not the worst part. When I went to pick up Eli from his classroom, the whispers followed me down the hall. 2 mothers turned their backs. One even pulled her daughter closer, like I was contagious. Eli came out of class, his eyes wide and uncertain. Mom, why is everyone looking at us? I couldn't answer him. The next morning, a notice was taped to our apartment door. Scholarship under review pending misconduct investigation. I tore it down with shaking hands, my heart pounding so loudly it echoed in my ears. They weren't just coming for my job. They were coming for my son's future. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, numb, while Eli did his math homework. He kept glancing at me, his pencil tapping against his notebook. He knew something was wrong. I could see it in the way he held his shoulders, tense like he was bracing for impact. The next day, everything became clearer and uglier. Ms. Rita pulled me aside near the cafeteria fridge. You didn't hear this from me, she said, but the Kingsley woman was bragging about how she told the board you were a security risk. Said she saw you looking at the bracelet. Angela, she's setting you up. My stomach twisted. Mrs. Kingsley had never liked that Eli got a scholarship. She once called him the charity boy under her breath. I thought I could ignore it, rise above it. But now I saw her for what she truly was, not just cruel, but dangerous. And then it hit me. If I got fired, we lost the apartment. If Eli lost the scholarship, he'd be back in a public school where fights broke out in the lunchroom and kids brought knives in their backpacks. I had worked too damn hard for too damn long for this to be how it ended. I was not going to let her win. Not quietly. And not without a fight. I stayed home for the next 3 days. Not because I wanted to. Because I had no choice. The suspension meant no income. No work meant bills piling up on the kitchen counter, like quiet threats. I kept opening the fridge, hoping maybe something new had appeared. It never did. Eli tried to pretend everything was normal, but I could see it, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. The way he packed his own lunch quietly and said, "It's okay, Mom. I'm not that hungry, anyway." He was lying for me, protecting me, and it broke my heart. The final blow came on a Friday morning when I got a message from Principal Dunning. Pending further evidence, we are discontinuing Eli's scholarship effective immediately. I stared at the screen for a full minute, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. But they didn't. Just like life didn't. That night, Eli didn't ask me anything. He just curled up beside me on the couch and held my hand. I should have been the one comforting him. But I had nothing left. No job, no money, no school for my son, and no one to call. I had no family to lean on. My parents were long gone, and my sister had stopped speaking to me years ago when I told her I wasn't going to chase a man to raise my kid. Even Ms. Rita stopped texting back. Maybe she was scared. Maybe they told her to stay away. When you're poor, your silence makes you invisible. But when you're accused of something, suddenly everyone sees you, just not the way you want. I sat at the window late that night, watching the streetlight flicker. My hands were shaking, not just from exhaustion but from the shame, the kind that crawls under your skin and convinces you it's your fault, even when it isn't. And the worst part? A tiny voice inside me started to believe them. Maybe I really don't belong there. Maybe I was foolish to think Eli and I ever had a place in their world. But just as the tears welled up, I heard Eli's soft breathing behind me, curled under his blanket, hugging that worn-out stuffed lion he'd had since he was 3. That sound, that steady rhythm of his breath, pulled me back. I had nothing left, except him. And maybe that was all I needed to rise again. Something inside me shifted the night they took Eli's scholarship. It wasn't loud. It didn't roar or scream. It just snapped, like a frayed thread pulled too tight for too long. I woke up the next morning with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. The pain was still there, deep and aching, but underneath it was something sharper. Focus. I couldn't afford lawyers. I couldn't afford justice the way they bought it. But I had time. And I had eyes. While the school suspended me, I still had access to my ID badge. They had forgotten to deactivate it. Maybe they thought I was too embarrassed to show my face again. That was their mistake. I went back at night, when the building was nearly empty. I told Eli I was going for a walk and made sure he was safe with Miss Calder, the kind old lady downstairs who owed me a favor after I fixed her broken heater last winter. I slipped in through the side entrance and headed straight to the security office. I knew the layout better than anyone, knew the guards' shift timings, knew which cameras had blind spots. I had cleaned every inch of that school. Now I used that knowledge to slip through it like a shadow. That night, I didn't find the video I was hoping for. No footage of Mrs. Kingsley with the bracelet. But I did find something else. Emails. One of the guards, Mr. Lance, had a habit of leaving his work computer unlocked. I watched quietly from behind a row of lockers as he went out for a smoke break. When I sat down at his desk, my hands trembled, but my mind was clear. There it was. A folder labeled PDA Communication. Auction. Dozens of emails. Long threads between Mrs. Kingsley, Principal Denning, and 2 other board members. They were discussing me, calling me a PR risk, a cleanup opportunity, and in one email, she wrote, "Her kid doesn't belong here anyway. We can use the bracelet as the final push. Say it was seen in her cleaning cart. Denning will back us up." I couldn't breathe. They didn't even bother hiding it.
This wasn't just about me. It was about Eli.
About how far people would go to protect their illusion of control, even if it meant destroying a child's future. I copied the emails onto a flash drive I had kept from my old desktop. Then I slipped out undetected. The next few days, I didn't sleep much. I planned. I researched school policy, board accountability, media ethics. And then I went to the one person I knew could help me amplify the truth, Claire Benton, a local reporter who once interviewed Eli during a school science fair.
She remembered me.
And when I showed her the emails, she went still. "This will blow up everything," she whispered. I nodded. That's the idea. We agreed on a plan. Claire would publish a story, an expose on elitism, corruption, and manipulation within Crest Hill Academy. We'd include audio clips of the board's conversations, recorded with my phone, and emails showing the intentional smear campaign. But we wouldn't release it all at once.
No.
I wanted them to feel it, bit by bit,
Leak by leak.
every parent, every teacher, every donor. Let the whispers spread. Let their pristine reputation rot from the inside. I wasn't going to scream in their faces. I was going to pull the rug out slowly and watch them fall. The first leak went live on a quiet Tuesday morning. Claire published a short article titled "The Invisible Ones: How Power Silences the Poor in Elite Schools." It didn't name names, not yet, but it painted a clear picture of manipulation and bias at Crest Hill Academy. It hinted at a janitor's wrongful suspension and the loss of a child's scholarship after an alleged theft, all without evidence. It took exactly 3 hours for it to go viral. By noon, the article had over 20,000 shares. By 2 p.m., it was being discussed on local news segments. Parents from other schools began commenting. Alumni started tagging the school board on social media. Hashtags popped up. Hashtag Justice for Eli. Hashtag Crest Hill Cover-Up. Hashtag Elitism Exposed. But I wasn't done. 2 days later, Claire dropped part 2. This time, she named names. Direct quotes from emails. Screenshots. A redacted voice clip from a PDA meeting where Mrs. Kingsley laughed and said, "If we wanted janitors raising leaders, we'd have installed mops in the boardroom." The reaction was explosive. By Friday, the school was forced to release a public statement. "We are aware of recent allegations and are conducting a thorough internal review."
A lie.
But a scared one. I watched Mrs. Kingsley walk into school that morning, surrounded by other PDA moms. But they weren't smiling at her anymore. They weren't hugging her. They were whispering, stepping slightly away, like she smelled of smoke and scandal.
Small win.
The next leak was the email where Principal Denning referred to me as the cleanup girl who got lucky with a scholarship kid. That one got him suspended. Bigger win. Then came the flash drive. Claire released everything. The full audio recordings, email threads, meeting notes, and internal memos. One file even included a deleted message between Mrs. Kingsley and a board member that read,
"She'll break."
"They always do when the pressure is high enough. She's barely surviving as it is." But I didn't break.
They did.
The school board panicked. Parents demanded emergency meetings. Donors began pulling out. Sponsors threatened lawsuits. Mrs. Kingsley tried to host a press conference to defend herself. Only 5 people showed up. One of them was a protester, holding a sign that said, "My mother cleans, too. She's worth more than your diamonds." Claire called me the night the last article went live.
"They're finished," she said.
I should have felt relief. But I wasn't quite there yet, because Eli still hadn't been reinstated. So I made one final move. The day of the board's emergency meeting, I walked into Crest Hill in my old janitor's uniform. No badge. No mop. Just truth. I requested to speak. They hesitated. But after all the public pressure, they couldn't say no. I stood at the podium and looked each board member in the eye, including the 2 who had quietly backed Mrs. Kingsley all along.
"You stole my job."
"You stole my child's opportunity. You didn't just accuse me. You tried to erase me. But I'm still here." Dead silence. Then I pulled out the letter, a formal scholarship reinstatement request, and placed it on the table. "I don't want apologies. I want what you took from my son." Principal Denning, pale and sweating in the corner, didn't speak. One of the board members finally cleared her throat. "We will review it immediately." I nodded.
"No."
"You'll approve it immediately. Or I go live with everything else I haven't released yet." Bluff. Maybe. But I had learned something through all of this. The rich survive on silence. You take that away, they crumble. They called me back into the boardroom the next day. This time, it wasn't quiet. Reporters were outside. Parents sat in the hallway, pretending to scroll their phones but watching every move. The scandal was still bleeding, and they needed a bandage fast. Mrs. Kingsley was already seated at the head of the long oak table when I walked in. She looked thinner, paler, her lips drawn into a tight smile like she still thought she was in control. "Angela," she said, her voice sweet with poison, "I hope we can resolve all this gracefully." I sat down across from her, locking eyes. "You mean quietly?" Her smile didn't move, but her fingers tightened around the armrest. "You've made quite a mess," she said, her tone slipping. "And for what? A scholarship? A janitor's pride?" I leaned forward.
"No."
"For my son. For the truth. For every single person you look down on like they didn't matter." She scoffed. "You think people will care about you tomorrow? About your sob story? This news cycle will move on. People like me, we survive." I shook my head, calm.
"No."
"You don't survive. You hide. You crawl behind lawyers and PR teams and think you're untouchable. But not this time." She stood suddenly, slamming her palms on the table. "You don't belong here." "And yet," I said, rising to meet her glare, "here I am." "And you? You're the one no one wants to sit next to anymore." Silence fell over the room as the board members looked on, frozen. "You framed me," I said, my voice steady. "You tried to destroy my life for control, for image, for ego." "I did what needed to be done," she snapped. "And I did what I had to," I replied. "The difference is, I don't regret a single second." Her eyes flickered, uncertain for the first time. "You think you won?" "No," I said, turning to the board and sliding over the signed reinstatement papers. "I think he won." The door creaked open. Eli peeked in, holding his acceptance letter, his eyes wide with hope and disbelief. "Is it true?" he asked. I smiled at him, my heart full. "Yes, sweetheart. You're going back." Mrs. Kingsley looked away. Her world had collapsed, not with fire, but with facts. With proof. With the quiet voice of a woman who refused to be erased. I took Eli's hand in mine, Turn back to her one last time.
You were right, I said.
I didn't belong in your world. And then I smiled. Turns out, your world doesn't exist anymore. Life did not magically fix itself after that day. The bills still came. My back still hurt after long shifts. And Eli still forgot to rinse his cereal bowl every morning. But something was different.
Me.
For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving, I was living. The school formally apologized, though it came in the form of a generic letter printed on Crest Hill's glossy letterhead. I didn't need their words. I had my son's smile the morning he walked back through those gates, his backpack bouncing behind him, his head held high. Mrs. Kingsley resigned from the PDA. Principal Dunning was replaced. And whispers still existed, sure. But they weren't about me anymore. Claire's final article closed the loop, calling me the mother who refused to be invisible. People started recognizing me at the grocery store, at the bus stop. They shook my hand, thanked me, told me their stories. But it wasn't their praise that changed me. It was Eli. One night, as we sat on our tiny sofa, popcorn between us, he looked up and said, "I knew you'd fix it. I always knew." And for the first time, I believed him. Not just about the fight we had won, but about who I had become. I wasn't just a janitor. Or a mother. I was proof that even the smallest voice, when it refuses to break, can shake the walls of the biggest rooms. And that's exactly what I did.